Buenos Aires is the capital and largest city of Argentina. The city is located on the western shore of the estuary of the Rio de la Plata on the continent's southeastern coast. The meaning of Buenos Aires is clean air or good air. The Greater Buenos Aires conurbation, which also includes several Buenos Aires Province districts, constitutes the third largest conurbation in Latin America, with a population of around 17 million. The city of Buenos Aires is neither part of Buenos Aires Province nor the province's capital, rather, it is an autonomous district. In 1880, after decades of political infighting, Buenos Aires was federalized and removed from Buenos Aires Province. The city limits were enlarged to include the towns of Belgrano and Flores. Both are now neighborhoods of the city. The 1994 constitutional amendment granted the city autonomy, hence its formal name, Ciudad Autónoma de Buenos Aires. Its citizens first elected a chief of government in 1996, before the mayor was directly appointed by the President of the Republic. Buenos Aires is, along with Mexico City and Sao Paulo, one of the three Latin American cities considered an alpha city by the study GAWC5. Buenos Aires' quality of life was ranked 81st in the world, and one of the best in Latin America in 2012, with its per capita income among the three highest in the region. It is the most visited city in South America and the second most visited city of Latin America. Buenos Aires is a top tourist destination, and is known for its European-style architecture and rich cultural life. Buenos Aires held the first Pan-American Games in 1951, as well as hosting two venues in the 1978 FIFA World Cup. Buenos Aires will host the 2018 Summer Youth Olympics and the 2018 G20 Summit. Buenos Aires defines itself as a multicultural city, being home to multiple ethnic and religious groups. Also, several languages are spoken in the city in addition to Spanish, contributing to its culture and the dialect spoken in the city and in some other parts of the country. This is because in the last 150 years the city, and the country in general, has been a major recipient of millions of immigrants from all over the world, making it a melting pot where several ethnic groups live together and being considered as one of the most diverse cities in Latin America. Etymology. It is recorded under the archives of Aragonese that Catalan missionaries and Jesuits arriving in Cagliari under the Spanish crown, after its capture from the Pisans in 1324, established their headquarters on top of a hill that overlooked the city. The hill was known to them as Buen Air, as it was free of the foul smell prevalent in the old city, which is adjacent to swampland. During the siege of Cagliari, the Aragonese built a sanctuary to the Virgin Mary on top of the hill. In 1335, King Alfonso the Gentle donated the church to the Mercedarians, who built an abbey that stands to this day. In the years after that, a story circulated, claiming that a statue of the Virgin Mary was retrieved from the sea after it miraculously helped to calm a storm in the Mediterranean Sea. The statue was placed in the abbey. Spanish sailors, especially Andalusians, venerated this image and frequently invoked the fair winds to aid them in the navigation and prevent shipwrecks. A sanctuary to the Virgin of Buen Air would be later erected in Seville. In the first foundation of Buenos Aires, Spanish sailors arrived thankfully in the River de la Plata by the blessings of the Santa Maria de los Buenos Aires, the Holy Virgin Mary of the Good Winds, who was said to have given them the good winds to reach the coast of what is today the modern city of Buenos Aires. Pedro de Mendoza called the city Holy Mary of the Fair Winds, a name suggested by the chaplain of Mendoza's expedition, a devotee of the Virgin of Buen Air, after the Sardinian Madonna de Bonaria. Mendoza's settlement soon came under attack by indigenous people, and was abandoned in 1541. For many years, the name was attributed to a Sancho del Campo, who is said to have exclaimed, "How fair are the winds of this land!" As he arrived. But Eduardo Madero, in 1882, after conducting extensive research in Spanish archives, ultimately concluded that the name was indeed closely linked with the devotion of the sailors to Our Lady of Buenos. A second settlement was established in 1580 by Juan de Garay, who sailed down the Parana River from Asunción. Garay preserved the name originally chosen by Mendoza, calling the city Ciudad de la Santísima Trinidad y Puerto de Santa Maria del Buenos. The short form, Buenos Aires, became the common usage during the 17th century. The usual abbreviation for Buenos Aires in Spanish is BS, as it is common as well to refer to it as BA or BI, while BA is used commonly and more by expats that reside in the city. The locals use more often the abbreviation BES in one word. History. Colonial times. Seaman Juan Díaz de Solís, navigating in the name of Spain, was the first European to reach the Rio de la Plata in 1516. His expedition was cut short when he was killed during an attack by the native Charrúa tribe in what is now Uruguay. The city of Buenos Aires was first established as Ciudad de Nuestra Señora Santa Maria del Buenos after Our Lady of Bonaria on the 2nd of February 1536, by a Spanish expedition led by Pedro de Mendoza. The settlement founded by Mendoza was located in what is today the San Telmo district of Buenos Aires, south of the city center. More attacks by the indigenous people forced the settlers away, and in 1542 the site was abandoned. A second settlement was established in the 11th of June 1580 by Juan de Garay, who arrived by sailing down the Parana River from Asunción. He dubbed the settlement Santísima Trinidad, and its port became Puerto de Santa Maria de los Buenos Aires. From its earliest days, Buenos Aires depended primarily on trade. During most of the 17th and 18th centuries, Spanish ships were menaced by pirates, so they developed a complex system where ships with military protection were dispatched to Central America, across the land, from the to Lima, Peru, and from it to the inner cities of the Viceroyalty. Because of this, products took a very long time to arrive in Buenos Aires, and the taxes generated by the transport made them prohibitive. This scheme frustrated the traders of Buenos Aires, and a thriving contraband industry developed. This also instilled a deep resentment in Porteños towards the Spanish authorities. Sensing these feelings, Charles III of Spain progressively eased the trade restrictions and finally declared Buenos Aires an open port in the late 18th century. The capture of Portobello by British forces also fueled the need to foster commerce via the Atlantic route, to the detriment of Lima-based trade. One of his rulings was to split a region from the Viceroyalty of Peru and create instead the Viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata, with Buenos Aires as the capital. However, Charles's placating actions did not have the desired effect, and the Porteños, some of them versed in the ideology of the French Revolution, became even more convinced of the need for independence from Spain. War of Independence. During the British invasions of the Rio de la Plata, British forces attacked Buenos Aires twice. In 1806, the British successfully invaded Buenos Aires, but an army from Montevideo led by Santiago de Liniers defeated them. In the brief period of British rule, the Viceroy Rafael Sobremonte managed to escape to Córdoba and designated this city as capital. Buenos Aires became the capital again after its liberation, but Sobremonte could not resume his duties as Viceroy. Santiago de Liniers, chosen as new Viceroy, prepared the city against a possible new British attack and repelled the attempted invasion of 1807. The militarization generated in society changed the balance of power favorably for the criollos, as well as the development of the Peninsular War in Spain. An attempt by the Peninsular merchant Martín de Alzaga to remove Liniers and replace him with a junta was defeated by the criollo armies. However, by 1810 it would be those same armies who would support a new revolutionary attempt, successfully removing the new Viceroy Baltasar Hidalgo de Cisneros. This is known as the May Revolution, which is now celebrated as a national holiday. This event started the Argentine War of Independence, and many armies left Buenos Aires to fight the diverse strongholds of royalist resistance, with varying levels of success. The government was held first by two juntas of many members, then by two triumvirates, and finally by a unipersonal office, the Supreme Director. Formal independence from Spain was declared in 1816, at the Congress of Tucumán. Buenos Aires managed to endure the whole Spanish-American Wars of Independence without falling again under royalist rule. Historically, Buenos Aires has been Argentina's main venue for liberal, free trade and foreign ideas, while many of the provinces, especially to the northwest, advocated a more nationalistic and Catholic approach to political and social issues. Much of the internal tension in Argentina's history, starting with the centralist-federalist conflicts of the 19th century, can be traced back to these contrasting views. In the months immediately following the 25th of May Revolution, Buenos Aires sent a number of military envoys to the provinces with the intention of obtaining their approval. Many of these missions ended in violent clashes, and the enterprise fueled tensions between the capital and the provinces. In the 19th century, the city was blockaded twice by naval forces, by the French from 1838 to 1840, and later by an Anglo-French expedition from 1845 to 1848. Both blockades failed to force the city into submission, and the foreign powers eventually desisted from the demands. Modern history. During most of the 19th century, the political status of the city remained a sensitive subject. It was already capital of Buenos Aires Province, and between 1853 and 1860 it was the capital of the seceded state of Buenos Aires. The issue was fought out more than once on the battlefield, until the matter was finally settled in 1880 when the city was federalized and became the seat of government, with its mayor appointed by the president. The Casa Rosada became the seat of the president. Health conditions in poor areas were negative, with high rates of tuberculosis. Public health physicians and politicians typically blamed both the poor themselves and the ramshackle tenement houses for the spread of the dreaded disease. People ignored public health campaigns to limit the spread of contagious diseases, such as the prohibition of spitting on the streets, the strict guidelines to care for infants and young children, and quarantines that separated families from ill-loved ones. In addition to the wealth generated by the Buenos Aires customs and the fertile pampas, railroad development in the second half of the 19th century increased the economic power of Buenos Aires as raw materials flowed into its factories, a leading destination for immigrants from Europe, particularly Italy and Spain. From 1880 to 1930, Buenos Aires became a multicultural city that ranked itself with the major European capitals. The Colón Theatre became one of the world's top opera venues, and the city became the regional capital of radio, television, cinema, and theatre. The city's main avenues were built during those years, and the dawn of the 20th century saw the construction of South America's then tallest buildings and the first underground system. A second construction boom from 1945 to 1980 reshaped downtown and much of the city. Buenos Aires also attracted migrants from Argentina's provinces and neighboring countries. Shantytowns started growing around the city's industrial areas during the 1930s, leading to pervasive social problems and social contrasts with the largely upwardly mobile Buenos Aires population. These laborers became the political base of Peronism, which emerged in Buenos Aires during the pivotal demonstration of the 17th of October 1945. At the Plaza de Mayo, industrial workers of the Greater Buenos Aires industrial belt have been Peronism's main support base ever since, and Plaza de Mayo became the site for demonstrations and many of the country's political events. On the 16th of June 1955, however, a splinter faction of the Navy bombed the Plaza de Mayo area, killing 364 civilians. This was the only time the city was attacked from the air, and the event was followed by a military uprising which deposed President Perón. 3 months later, in the 1970s, the city suffered from the fighting between left-wing revolutionary movements and the right-wing paramilitary group AAA, supported by Isabel Perón, who became president of Argentina in 1974 after Juan Perón's death. The March 1976 coup, led by General Jorge Videla, only escalated this conflict. The Dirty War resulted in 30,000 desaparecidos. The silent marches of the mothers are a well-known image of Argentines suffering during those times. The dictatorship's appointed mayor, Osvaldo Cacciatore, also drew up plans for a network of freeways intended to relieve the city's acute traffic gridlock. The plan, however, called for a seemingly indiscriminate raising of residential areas and, though only 3 of the 8 planned were put up at the time, they were mostly obtrusive raised freeways that continue to blight a number of formerly comfortable neighborhoods to this day. The city was visited by Pope John Paul II twice, in 1982, and a second visit in 1987, which gathered some of the largest crowds in the city's history. The return of democracy in 1983 coincided with a cultural revival, and the 1990s saw an economic revival, particularly in the construction and financial sectors. On the 17th of March 1992, a bomb exploded in the Israeli embassy, killing 29 and injuring 242. Another explosion, on the 18th of July 1994, destroyed a building housing several Jewish organizations, killing 85 and injuring many more. These incidents marked the beginning of Middle Eastern terrorism to South America. Following a 1993 agreement, the Argentine constitution was amended to give Buenos Aires autonomy and rescinding, among other things, the president's right to appoint the city's mayor. On the 30th of June 1996, voters in Buenos Aires chose the first elected mayor. On the 30th of December 2004, a fire at the República Cromagnon nightclub killed almost 200 people, one of the greatest non-natural tragedies in Argentine history. On the 22nd of February 2012, a train crashed at one station. 51 people were killed and more than 700 were injured. The dead and seriously injured were in the first 2 carriages, which was packed with people who had moved to the front of the train to be near the station exit on arrival. Government and politics. Government structure. The executive is held by the chief of government, elected for a 4-year term together with a deputy chief of government, who presides over the 60-member Buenos Aires city legislature. Each member of the legislature is elected for a 4-year term. Half of the legislature is renewed every 2 years. Elections use the DONT method of proportional representation. The judicial branch is composed of the Supreme Court of Justice, the Magistrates' Council, the Public Ministry, and other city courts. The Article 61 of the 1996 Constitution of the City of Buenos Aires states that suffrage is free, equal, secret, universal, compulsory and non-accumulative. Resident aliens enjoy this same right with its corresponding obligations, on equal terms with Argentine citizens registered in the district, under the terms established by law. Legally, the city has less autonomy than the provinces. In June 1996, shortly before the city's first executive elections were held, the Argentine National Congress issued the National Law 24.588, by which the authority over the 25,000-strong Argentine Federal Police and the responsibility over the federal institutions residing at the city would not be transferred from the national government to the autonomous city government until a new consensus could be reached at the National Congress. Furthermore, it declared that the Port of Buenos Aires, along with some other places, would remain under constituted federal authorities. As of 2011, the deployment of the Metropolitan Police of Buenos Aires is ongoing. Beginning in 2007, the city has embarked on a new decentralization scheme, creating new communes which are to be managed by elected committees of 7 members each. Recent political history. In 1996, following the 1994 reform of the Argentine Constitution, the city held its first mayoral elections under the new statutes, with the mayor's title formally changed to head of government. The winner was Fernando de la Rúa, who would later become president of Argentina from 1999 to 2001. De la Rúa's successor, Aníbal Ibarra, won 2 popular elections, but was impeached as a result of the fire at the República Cromañón nightclub. George Telemann, who had been the acting mayor, was invested with the office. In the 2007 elections, Mauricio Macri of the Republican Proposal Party won the second round of voting over Daniel Filmus of the Frente para la Victoria Party, taking office on the 9th of December 2007. In 2011, the elections went to a second round with 60.96% of the vote for PRO, compared to 39.04% for FPV, thus re-electing Macri as mayor of the city with Maria Eugenia Vidal as deputy mayor. The 2015 elections were the first to use an electronic voting system in the city, similar to the one used in Salta province. In these elections held on the 5th of July 2015, Macri stepped down as mayor and pursued his presidential bid, and Horacio Rodriguez Larreta took his place as the mayoral candidate for PRO. In the first round of voting, FPV's Mariana Recalde obtained 21.78% of the vote, while Martin Lusto of the Eco Party obtained 25.59% and Larreta obtained 45.55%, meaning that the elections went to a second round since PRO was unable to secure the majority required for victory. The second round was held on the 19th of July 2015 and Larreta obtained 51.6% of the vote, followed closely by Lusto with 48.4%. Thus PRO won the elections for a third term with Larreta as mayor and Diego Santos Santilli as deputy. In these elections, PRO was stronger in the wealthier neighborhoods of northern Buenos Aires, while ECO was stronger in the south of the city. National representation: Buenos Aires is represented in the Argentine Senate by 3 senators. The people of Buenos Aires also elect 25 national deputies to the Argentine Chamber of Deputies. Demographics. Census data: in the census of 2010 there were 2,891,082 people residing in the city. The population of Greater Buenos Aires was 13,147,638 according to 2010 census data. The population density in Buenos Aires proper was 13,680 inhabitants per square kilometer, but only about 2,400 per square kilometers in the suburbs. The population of Buenos Aires proper has hovered around 3 million since 1947, due to low birth rates and a slow migration to the suburbs. The surrounding districts have, however, expanded over 5-fold since then. The 2001 census showed a relatively aged population, with 17% under the age of 15 and 22% over 60. The people of Buenos Aires have an age structure similar to those in most European cities. They are older than Argentines as a whole. 2/3 of the city's residents live in apartment buildings and 30% in single-family homes. 4% live in substandard housing. Measured in terms of income, the city's poverty rate was 8.4% in 2007 and, including the metro area, 20.6%. Other studies estimate that 4 million people in the metropolitan Buenos Aires area live in poverty. The city's resident labor force of 1.2 million in 2001 was mostly employed in the services sector, particularly social services, commerce and tourism, and business and financial services. Despite the city's role as Argentina's capital, public administration employed only 6%. Manufacturing still employed 10%. Districts: the city is divided into barrios for administrative purposes, a division originally based on Catholic parroquias. A common expression is that of the Cien Barrios Porteños, referring to a composition made popular in the 1940s by tango singer Alberto Castillo. However, Buenos Aires only consists of 48 official barrios. There are several subdivisions of these districts, some with a long history and others that are the product of a real estate invention. A notable example is Palermo, the city's largest district, which has been subdivided into various barrios, including Palermo Soho, Palermo Hollywood, Las Cañitas and Palermo Viejo, among others. A newer scheme has divided the city into 15 comunas. Population origin: the majority of Porteños have European origins, mostly from the Calabrian, Ligurian, Piedmont, Lombardy, Sicily and Campania regions of Italy, and from the Andalusian, Galician, Asturian, and Basque regions of Spain. Unrestricted waves of European immigrants to Argentina starting in the mid-19th century significantly increased the country's population, even causing the number of Porteños to triple between 1887 and 1915 from 500,000 to 1.5 million. Other significant European origins include German, Scottish, Norwegian, Polish, French, Portuguese, Swedish, Greek, Czech, Croatian, Dutch, Russian, Serbian, English, Hungarian and Bulgarian. In the 1980s and 1990s, there was a small wave of immigration from Romania and Ukraine. There is a minority of Criollo citizens, dating back to the Spanish colonial days. The Criollo and Spanish Aboriginal population in the city has increased mostly as a result of immigration from the inner provinces and from other countries such as neighboring Bolivia, Paraguay, Chile and Peru. Since the second half of the 20th century, the Jewish community in Greater Buenos Aires numbers around 250,000, and is the largest in Latin America. Most are of northern, western, central, and eastern European Ashkenazi origin, primarily Swedish, Dutch, Polish, German, and Russian Jews, with a significant Sephardic minority, mostly made up of Syrian Jews and Lebanese Jews. Important Lebanese, Georgians, Syrian and Armenian communities have had a significant presence in commerce and civic life since the beginning of the 20th century. Most East Asian immigration in Buenos Aires comes from China. Chinese immigration is the fourth largest in Argentina, with the vast majority of them living in Buenos Aires and its metropolitan area. In the 1980s, most of them were from Taiwan, but since the 1990s the majority of Chinese immigrants come from the continental province of Fujian. The mainland Chinese who came from Fujian mainly installed supermarkets throughout the city and the suburbs. These supermarkets are so common that, in average, there is one every 2.5 blocks and are simply referred to as El Chino. Japanese immigrants are mostly from the Okinawa prefecture. They started the dry cleaning business in Argentina, an activity that is considered idiosyncratic to the Japanese immigrants in Buenos Aires. Korean immigration occurred after the division of Korea. They mainly settled in Flores and once. In the 2010 census, 2.1% of the population, or 61,876 persons, declared to be Amerindian, of first-generation descendants of Amerindians in Buenos Aires. Amongst the 61,876 persons who are of indigenous origin, 15.9% are Quechua people, 15.9% are Guarani, 15.5% are Aymara, and 11% are Mapuche. Within the 24 adjacent partidos, 186,640 persons, or 1.9% of the total population, declared themselves to be Amerindian. Amongst the 186,640 persons who are of indigenous origin, 21.2% are Guarani, 19% are Toba, 11.3% are Mapuche, 10.5% are Quechua, and 7.6% are Diaguitar. In the city, 15,764 people identified themselves as Afro-Argentine in the 2010 census. Religion: most inhabitants are Roman Catholic, though studies in recent decades found that fewer than 20% are practicing. Buenos Aires is the seat of the Roman Catholic Metropolitan Archbishop, currently Archbishop Mario Poli. His predecessor, Cardinal George Bergoglio, was elected to the papacy as Pope Francis on 13 March 2013. There are Protestant, Orthodox Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormon, and Buddhist minorities. The city is home to the largest mosque in South America. Also, irreligion in Buenos Aires is higher than in other parts of the country, with about 18.0% of the porteños declaring themselves as either atheist or agnostic.